When I used to think of freelancing, I always thought freedom, which is ironic because when you actually start out, in a lot of aspects, you're going to experience the opposite of freedom. You're going to have more stress, more responsibility. Yes, you won't have anybody to tell you when to work, but you also won't have anybody to tell you when not to work. And still, after 3 years, there's no way I would want to go back to being employed. And I think it depends sort of on the person that you are. But if you're interested in becoming a freelance developer, then here are all the things that helped me over the last 3 years to do it. When I started out coding, it took me ages until I felt comfortable enough saying that I'm now a professional developer. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling, and they all need like this external validation of somebody saying, now here's your official job title, you are now a software developer. But the truth is, you become what you do. If you spend a lot of time on an interest, your brain starts thinking like a photographer, developer, musician, writer, whatever. Your brain inches towards that interest. In other words, it's what you do day after day. And it takes a lot of time, but it helps if you're being intentional about it. What I mean by that is, if you set out with the goal of becoming a freelance developer, your brain is going to start asking the right kind of questions that you need the answers for. So for me, for example, when I decided I want to become a freelancer, I started asking myself, well, how am I going to do that? Like, how am I going to create websites from scratch and then deliver it to somebody who has never coded in their life before, right? A client that is non-technical. Or the question of like, how can I even compete with people that are building websites on WordPress or Wix or all the other website builders that basically get you running in no time? And of course, I spend a lot of time answering these questions. And if you're being meticulous about this process, you're going to learn so much. You're going to learn how to become a better developer. You're going to learn how to talk to clients the right way. You're going to learn how to sell yourself better. You're going to learn so much more. But you have to put in the time. There's no shortcut around it. The main thing for you as a freelancer is to set yourself apart. And the easiest way to do that is work on your craft every single day. I hate conferences, and I hate the awkward small talk you have to do there to figure out whether somebody could be a valuable contact in the future. So instead, what I like to do is I like to meet cool people that are interested in the same things as me. If you live in a city, any kind of medium-sized city, there's a very good chance you're going to have some kind of tech meetup around you, whether it's some kind of developers club or a developer meetup or just startup founders, whatever it is that are interested in tech, there will be something around you. And if not, you can still just start it yourself. You will usually find like-minded people. And the setup is always the same. You usually go there, have a few drinks, and just have some relaxed chats to find out what people are actually doing, what they're building in their free time, and maybe also what kind of jobs they need to have done for their companies. Now, having and building on a network of people is, in my opinion, still the cheapest and easiest way to land clients. Because you have to remember, the skill that you have as a developer is still a very specialized skill. If you have one client and you put 1,000 random people in front of them, and the client says, I want to have this kind of website built, how many of those 1,000 people can actually build that website to the request of the client? And now how many of those are actually freelancers, are actually available to do that job? And how many of those will actually have currently the capacity to do that job? And now how many of those will in some way be connected to the client so that they actually can get hired? And that will be very few. Sorry about the background noise. that will be very few. Now, your job is to make those connections so that you will have some kind of path to the client that actually needs your job. Because still, the most important thing is that personal touch. There are a lot of platforms that are trying to provide these services, right? Try to connect a client with a future freelancer, but they all miss this personal touch. And this is where you can shine if you build your network. What the network is, it's just your social network, your friends, because a lot of my first jobs actually came from friends that I made years ago that were working for a company that needed to have a website built or that needed to have some data analyzed or whatever it was. In other words, you need to go out and you need to make connections and you need to show people what you're doing, because that will set you apart. And if you have that personal connection, the most important question that is always being asked in a freelance client interview is usually, are you a dick to work with? You know, can I be working with you? And everything else can be figured out later. Obviously, it's still a lot better if you can offer something more than just not being a dick. And for that, you have to get experience. For me, when I started out, I started doing like little projects on the side that paid like 10 euros an hour that I was doing next to my full-time job just to get something in my portfolio. And I would recommend that to everybody because first of all, even if it's just 10 euros, you're getting paid to learn. And you also can then in future interviews with future clients say, I shipped that, I built that. And for me, those projects that I was building on the side already showed me how it would work in the future when I was freelancing. You have to deal with your clients, you have to be under a bit of more pressure because you have to release something at a deadline. All of those things you're also going to learn with small projects at the beginning. And I also see a lot of advice online of people telling you that you should work for free at the beginning, just to have something in your portfolio. And I'm completely against that. First of all, I think you should always get paid for when you do some work, unless you're working for yourself or doing it for friends or anything like that. But more importantly to me is that when the client pays something, there's a little bit of investment of them into the project. My experience has been that if you work for completely free, people won't really care what the project or how the project ends up. So the first thing is, right, you should get paid. If you reach out to local businesses and try to ask them to build a website, just charge like a very small rate, like smaller than, you know, the market rate, so that you get the experience, you get paid to learn, but they also have the feeling that this is something professional. And then on the third point, obviously, and the most important one, you get to put it into your portfolio. You can put it on your website. And when you then have a contact in the future with somebody that wants to hire you, you can go and say like, hey, I built this is in production now. And they will see that you're capable of releasing a website, which is huge. Because honestly, client freelance interviews, job interviews are very different than when you try to get hired as a software developer. Like in client interviews, you're going to have somebody sitting opposite of you that very likely doesn't know how to code. So those interviews will be not technical. They won't go into the interview asking you like, oh, can you like show me how you would fetch some data and you do like some whiteboarding interview or whatever. No, they're basically trying to figure out, do I want to work with this kind of person? If so, do I trust them to do the job? And for that, they want to look at past projects you've built. Now, freelancing does not really have the most stable income. And if that scares you, there are luckily a few things that can give you a little bit more security. When I started freelancing, I just jumped in the cold water. I had no clients and I had about 6 months of runway. And every time I would get a client, I would just calculate like how many more months of freelancing does this give me. That can work, but I was really happy that I could find a job that was a reliable income on the side and that I could always sort of go back to when I didn't have that much client work at the moment. And for me, that was teaching. If you're a freelancer and you're selling some skill, there's a very high chance you could get into teaching as well. And it will make you understand your craft even more. And like I said, it's always something you can come back on. It's very flexible. Another thing that gives you great flexibility are those freelance platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and so on, which I would kind of consider similarly, right? You can have them on the side when there's no other client work coming up. You can go there. You're probably going to earn less, but you still gain experience for your portfolio. I have to be honest though, I had never had to use them, so I've never tried it out, but it's always on my list of things that I want to do if client work really slows down and I need to find some additional income. Because the thing is, you're going to earn some money from those platforms, but then if you do find higher paid work somewhere else, you can just stop working for those platforms as well. Whether you want to stay where you are or you want to move abroad doesn't really influence anything that I just talked about. If you have the skills and if you have the network, you will be able to work from anywhere you want. The only thing to bear in mind are local regulations, right? And most importantly, like tax regulation, how to set up your business, also visa requirements, which for me as an EU citizen was very easy, right? There were no real barriers moving from Germany to Spain. The only thing I had to take care of the only thing I fought against was Spanish bureaucracy, which is quite hard to navigate unless you speak perfect Spanish. And even then, it's not that easy. And I realized pretty quickly that I shouldn't do this on my own. So I got myself some help. I now have an accountant that I pay like 60 euros a month for, but he handles everything around tax. He handles everything around setting up my business. And also if there's like a routine audit or something like that, it will be handled by them. And I'm not saying you can't do these things on your own. I met quite a few people who are doing it, who are filing their taxes every 3 months by themselves. But for me, it just gives me that additional peace of mind. I know that things are being done properly and I'm not doing anything accidentally illegal or something like that. Otherwise, there's really no difference. All my clients are remote. I haven't had one call with a potential client that told me like, oh, you need to be in the same city or you need to come to the office from time to time. It's just not a thing for freelancers, at least not in my experience. Obviously, if you only lived your whole life in your home country or your home city, there will be other challenges with moving abroad, but nothing really related to freelancing. Because the bottom line is, if you have the skills, the clients, the network, all of that, you can pretty much pick wherever you want to. And if you have problems with like visa requirements and stuff like that, I've also met a couple of people that just have their home base back in their home country, but then like 3 to 6 months a year, they just travel around and work from co-working spaces and things like that. So it's for sure possible, but the main goal first should be, okay, how can I become a freelancer? And then how can I move abroad and live in my dream country, wherever that might be. What it really comes down to at the end of the day is really your motivation. If you want to be a freelancer and you have the motivation and the discipline, as cliche as it sounds, you're going to pick up the skills you need. And you're going to need a lot of skills because freelancing is quite versatile, meaning that you could land a job or like an employee job if you just focus on the front end or just on the back end. But as a freelancer, you very often have to also learn a little bit about DevOps. You have to basically be a one-man show that can keep a website running smoothly. Now those are the hard skills. On the other hand, you also need to pick up some soft skills. Most importantly, you have to be able to break down technical stuff for people that don't have a technical background, right? You have to be able to communicate well. And as I was saying before as well, you should be nice to work with because that is one of the most important hiring qualifications. The main thing to remember is soft skills will get you the job, hard skills will make you keep the job. And if you want to learn more about freelancing and also generally the projects that I'm working on, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I also have a course on the Freelance Stack that I've been using over the last 3 years to deliver websites and full stack applications to clients who cannot code. So feel free to check that out as well. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.